This is Steve Liu, and today I'm going to talk about how to get FCC approval in a real, general, high-level way. But because this is tech, I'm going to fly high but give you the nuggets and really specific things that you may or may not have been aware of. And the reason why I'm getting this information out there is not because it's hidden knowledge. It's actually all in the public domain already. But I've been doing this for over 20 years for clients. And for me, it was fun just to hear about the certification problems and challenges that they were having and applying my engineering skill and also creativity to help them solve problems. And speaking to clients at the front end of the projects really saved my clients a ton of time. And people say time is money. And I understand why people say this, but I think since the pandemic, money isn't the valuable thing anymore, but instead, people and companies want to save time and resources because time is something you can't buy, but you can make sure from the start you're not burning a bunch of time later on fixing things that should have been done right the first time. So, something I've been doing and what I want to use this forum to do is number one, saving people's time to understand exactly what's needed to get an FCC approval. But most of all, it's really to get this knowledge out there so people can make informed decisions and understanding how FCC approvals and the importance of the compliance field is to give the public and the industry the highest confidence of the products out there. I know it's been a while since I've put out some content, but now with the summer underway, school, university out, I can put a little more effort into getting some more content out for you all. And again, if you find this helpful, please subscribe and like the videos and feel free to share with others, even in your own companies or organizations, if you think it'll help them. And I'd love to connect with some of you who might have been following me on LinkedIn or YouTube. And in the description, I actually put a link if you wanted to schedule a free 20-minute consultation with me. I'd love to hear about your questions or even problems you're trying to solve in this space. And I know this video is going to be pretty lengthy, so I'm putting in chapter headings so you can go right to the content that you're interested in. All right, so with that, let's get into this. So today we're going to go super basic, like entry level, especially for people trying to get into compliance, or maybe you're a startup, or maybe you're trying to get a product through FCC, or maybe you've done this for a while, but really need sort of a general overview, what you maybe already know, or a refresher. Or maybe you're thinking of doing something wireless, creating a tech product, and you realize all of a sudden you need FCC certification. You're trying to find out what that's about. So any of those ranges are you, this video is for you. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just sharing this more on the practical side and knowledge sharing from my 20 plus years of experience with a test lab and a TCB. And I hope it's informative to help you understand the process a little bit better. But ultimately, especially if you're working for a manufacturer, you have your own legal representation or having your own certification body work together with you, knowing your product plans to make sure your plans are in compliance with the FCC. And yes, I mean plans because there are rules actually governing even before you make a prototype, which I'll refer to later. Now, there's an official legal print publication of the rules and regulations governing the United States called the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, which have rules for everything from agriculture, energy, immigration, banking, space, food and drugs, taxes, labor, education, national defense, you name it. And each of these major areas of law are separated into title numbers. And Title 47 is one family of laws focused on telecommunications. And I'll put a link to the electronic version of the Code of Federal Regulations. But one thing to note that the print publication is the official authoritative rules and not the eCFR. And it clearly states on the government website that the electronic Code of Federal Regulations is a continuously updated online version of the official CFR, and it's not an official legal edition of the CFR. So this is something to be aware of. But anyway, they update it every day, so it should be okay for just a regular person. So before I get into what's required to get a product certified with FCC, you might be asking, do I even need FCC certification for my product? And so first of all, the scope of the FCC rules covers what's called radio frequency devices. Radio frequency devices, according to Title 47 CFR Part 2 801, is any device when in its operation is capable of emitting radio frequency energy by radiation, conduction, or other means. And it goes on to say that these devices include but are not limited to, in subpart A, various types of radio communication transmitting devices described in this chapter, quote unquote, which is chapter 1, which includes everything from part 0 to 199. And then 801B says incidental, unintentional, and intentional radiators described in the same chapter in part 15. And 801C says industrial, scientific, and medical equipment described in part 18, or often referred to as ISM equipment. 801D, any part or component thereof which in use emits radio frequency energy by radiation, conduction, or other means. So all these kinds of products are subject to certification with FCC. And if your product requires certification and you plan to market your product, then this part is for you. Because even before you make a prototype, you have to understand the rules of marketing. And in part 2, 803B, it says, no person may market a radio frequency device unless the device has been authorized in accordance with subpart J, which is a bunch of rules in part 2, and is labeled as required by part 2, 925, and other relevant sections in these rules. So even before you have a prototype, it's super important you don't make this critical mistake to try to market to your customers or the public ahead of having FCC authorization. That's not permitted. And some manufacturers miss this because they think advertising, marketing, or pre-sales is fine without thinking about this or getting FCC ID, but it's not. But in 2803C, it actually describes a few exceptions, like products authorized under waivers of rules or rules that haven't been made effective yet, or SDOC, or what's called pre-sale activity like stocking distribution centers, when filing applications are in the hands of a TCB, and all these with really strict rules on the packaging with removable labels, making clear that end users can't be given those devices until FCC certification is obtained. And they make clear that the FCC ID needs to be covered up or hidden from the electronic menus until equipment authorization is obtained. And an interesting thing that might be useful for some manufacturers, especially showing off at a trade show, is that what's called conspicuous notices need to say this device has not authorized as required by the rules of the FCC. This device is not and may not be offered for sale or lease or sold or leased until authorization is obtained. So 803C2 III sometimes manufacturers have a prototype that really isn't the same as an existing authorized device, since it's meant to be like something put on display or something. And they're able to put on a label called prototype or not for sale. So the other thing is about importing into the United States. And most manufacturers mass produce products outside the United States. So when they import products into the US, Part 2, 1204A says radio frequency devices may be imported only if one or more of these conditions are met. And there's a whole bunch. So I'll list this out. These are all under Part 2, 1204, Section A. So I'll just enumerate them. So number 1 says the device has an equipment authorization by the FCC. So if you have a grant or equipment authorization, then you can import. That's the basic one. Or number 2, a device is not required to have an equipment authorization. And so the device complies with the FCC technical administrative regulations. That's also an exception. And number 3, if the device is being imported, has a quantity of 4,000 or fewer units for testing and evaluation, determine if it can pass FCC rules. But note that those devices can't be offered for sale or marketed. And if you want to import more than 4,000 units, you need to get written approval from the chief of the OET lab in FCC. And number 4, the device being imported is, quote, a limited quantity, which means 400 or fewer, and used for demonstrations or trade shows. And again, those cannot be marketed or offered for sale. And again, if more than 400 units for this purpose wants to be imported, then you need written authorization from the chief of the OAT lab and FCC. Number 5, if the device is being imported, is solely going to be exported, meaning it won't be marketed or offered for sale in the United States. And absolutely no modes can be used in the United States and can only be used in the United States. So basically, it's coming in so that the main purpose is for exporting. And number 6, the device is exclusively used by the US government. Number 7, 3 or fewer devices are being imported for personal use and not intended for sale. And number 8, the device is being imported for repair and not sold or marketed. Number 9, the device is a medical implant inserted into a person or a Part 95 medical body-worn transmitter that a person's already received permission from the government to import. Number 10, 3 or fewer satellite Part 15129 personal devices not offered for sale or leased in the United States. And then number 11, devices that require certification per 2907, imported limited quantities, 12,000 or less, but there certain rules like requiring those devices to be tested by FCC accredited laboratory and it's been submitted to the FCC, to the TCB, along with some other temporary label things saying this device cannot be delivered to end users, displayed, or operated until the device receives certification, from the FCC. Under penalty of law, this label must be removed prior to receiving FCC certification or grant. So it allows a certain quantity to be imported given those conditions. Now, if any of those things apply to you, not the exceptions, but if you require FCC certification and you need to get a product certified to the FCC rules, then the rest of this video is relevant for you. And I'll put in the bookmarks in this video so you can skip to different parts again. But I'll go through the whole process generally so you know exactly what you need to prepare in order to be able to sell, import, or market your product in the United States. And I think the best way to talk about this is to start backwards, starting from getting the FCC grant. Now, this is the end game for every manufacturer, the FCC grant, or in the rules it's called equipment authorization. And once your product is authorized or gets granted, then anyone can type in the FCC ID into the commission, the FCC's website, and find all the information they need to check to ensure the product complies with all the rules of the United States, including RF safety. Now, I'll put a link into the description where you can actually type in the FCC if you have like a phone or a tablet or Bluetooth, this or that. You can actually find the FCC ID and type in your identifier and see how it's been tested. And you can check all the documents surrounding your device. And it's really actually interesting, at least for me.